I found out 4 of my 5 kids aren't mine. My wife told me to man up, but my revenge left her in tears. You ever have one of those moments where your whole world just stops? Like everything you thought was real just shatters in front of you? That was me that night, sitting on my bed, holding a piece of paper that ripped my entire life apart. I got home early from work that day. The house was quiet. The kids were at school. Sarah, my wife, was out running errands. I wasn't even supposed to be home yet, but I had this feeling in my gut. Something had been off for months. Sarah was distant cold. She barely looked at me anymore. Whenever I walked into a room, she'd put her phone down too fast, like she was hiding something. I ignored it for a while, told myself I was overthinking. But that day changed everything. I went into our bedroom, looking for some old insurance papers. I dug through the drawer, pulling out folders and receipts. And then I saw it, a white envelope folded neatly under a stack of old bills. I wouldn't have even noticed it if I wasn't searching so hard for those damn papers. I pulled it out and flipped it over. My name wasn't on it, but I knew it belonged to me. My hands shook as I opened it. My stomach twisted as I read the words on the page. Paternity test. Result. 0%. I blinked. My brain refused to process it. My hands gripped the paper so tight it crumpled slightly. I read it again. 0%. My son, my firstborn, my boy, he wasn't mine. My heart pounded in my chest. My breathing turned shallow. My body felt frozen. Like if I moved even an inch, everything would collapse. I should have stopped there. I should have thrown that paper away and pretended I never saw it. But I couldn't. I dug deeper, frantically pulling out more papers, more envelopes. My hands moved on their own, my mind screaming for me to stop. I found 3 more DNA tests, 1 for each of my other kids. I ripped them open, scanned each result. My vision blurred. My head spun. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. 0%. 0%. 0%. Out of my 5 children, only 1 was actually mine. I sat there for what felt like forever. The room around me felt smaller, like the walls were closing in on me. My throat was dry. My chest felt tight. Every memory of my kids flashed through my mind. Every time I looked at them with pride. Every time I held them when they cried. Every time I promised to protect them. And it was all built on a lie. My hands clenched into fists. My whole body trembled with a mix of rage and heartbreak. How long had she been lying to me? Who was the real father? How could she do this to me? I wasn't just betrayed. I was used like a damn fool. I took a deep breath. My mind was racing, but one thought was crystal clear. Sarah had no idea I knew, and I was going to use that to my advantage. I sat there staring at those damn papers. My whole body felt like it was on fire. My hands were gripping the test results so tight, the edges were tearing. 4 out of 5 kids weren't mine. That thought echoed in my head over and over like a nightmare. I couldn't wake up from. I wanted to scream, punch something, break everything in sight, but I didn't. I forced myself to breathe, forced myself to think. Sarah was going to walk through that door soon, and she had no idea. I knew I needed to keep my cool. I needed to be smart. If I lost control now, I'd lose the only advantage I had. I grabbed my phone, my hands still shaking, and scrolled through my pictures. Every single one of them felt like a joke. My wedding photos, my kids' birthdays, holidays, vacations. Every moment I thought was real was built on lies. I clicked on a picture of my youngest, the only one who was actually mine. His big, innocent eyes stared back at me. My jaw clenched. My heart ached for him. He was the only truth in this mess. I had to protect him. I shoved the papers back into the drawer, forced my face to relax, and walked into the kitchen just as I heard the front door open. Sarah walked in, carrying a few grocery bags, like everything was normal, like she wasn't the biggest liar on the planet. She smiled at me. "Hey babe, you're home early." Her voice, her face, it made me sick. I felt my nails digging into my palm, but I smiled back, kept my voice steady. "Yeah, I got off a little early. Thought I'd surprise you." She leaned in and kissed my cheek, like she hadn't just spent years making a fool out of me. I forced myself not to flinch. I had to play this carefully. I had to act normal until I figured out my next move. We sat down for dinner later that evening. The kids were loud and laughing, completely oblivious to the war raging inside me. I watched them closely, watched Sarah more. Every time she looked at them, was she thinking about their real father? Did she ever feel guilty? Did she ever feel anything at all? She had no clue I was staring at her like a ticking time bomb. No idea her perfect little world was about to come crashing down. I took a sip of water, keeping my voice light. "Hey Sarah, can I ask you something?" She looked up at me smiling. "Of course, what's up?" I set my glass down, meeting her eyes. "Are you happy?" The question caught her off guard. She blinked. "What do you mean?" I shrugged. "Just wondering if you ever look at our life and feel like something's missing." Her smile faltered for a split second, so fast most people wouldn't have noticed. But I did. She laughed a little, shaking her head. "Of course not. We have a great life. Why are you asking?" I leaned back, studying her. I wanted to push. I wanted to corner her, right then and there. But I knew she'd lie. She was good at lying. She had to be to pull this off for so many years. So I smiled, just checking. I let the conversation drop, but inside I was burning. I needed to know everything. I needed to find out who the real father was, how long this had been going on. If anyone else knew, I needed to gather every piece of truth before I destroyed her with it. That night when she fell asleep next to me, like nothing was wrong. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. I had a plan forming in my head, and Sarah had no idea what was coming. I barely slept that night. My mind was a battlefield. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those damn DNA results flashing in my head. Sarah's smile, her laugh, the way she kissed me, like I was the only man she ever loved. It was all fake, every single second of it. But I couldn't just explode on her. I needed to be smart. I needed proof. More than just a piece of paper. I needed to know who she cheated with, how long it had been going on, and if anyone else knew. By morning, I had a plan. Sarah was in the kitchen making breakfast, humming to herself, like she wasn't the biggest liar I'd ever met. My stomach turned just looking at her, but I forced a smile. "Morning, babe," I said, acting normal. I had to play the part. She turned to me with that same fake smile. "Morning. Did you sleep? Okay." I nodded, taking a sip of my coffee. "Yeah, just thinking about some work stuff." She didn't suspect a thing. She had no idea I was watching her every move, analyzing every word. I grabbed my phone and pretended to check emails, but instead I was digging through our phone records. I had access to our shared phone bill, every call, every text she had ever made. I never had a reason to look before. But now I was hunting for the truth. And it didn't take long to find something. A number popped up repeatedly. Hundreds of calls and texts, going back for years. Sometimes late at night. Sometimes when I was at work. Sometimes even on holidays. When we were supposed to be together as a family, I copied the number into my phone, and my heart was pounding. I didn't recognize it. It wasn't saved under a name, but I had a feeling deep in my gut that this was him. The man who fathered 4 of my 5 kids. I needed to see for myself. I needed to hear his voice, so I did something risky. I stepped outside pretending to take a work call and dialed the number. It rang once, twice. My heart was in my throat. Then a deep voice answered, "Hey babe, everything okay?" I froze. I swear my blood turned to ice. The way he said it, so casual, so familiar. He thought I was Sarah. He thought his dirty little secret was calling him like she always did. I clenched my jaw, fighting every urge to explode right then and there. I forced myself to stay calm, my voice steady. "Yeah, everything's fine," I said, mimicking Sarah's tone as best as I could. "Just wanted to hear your voice." He chuckled. "Miss me already?" I felt sick. My own wife had been saying those words to another man. I needed to know who he was, so I pushed further. "Of course I do," I said, forcing myself to sound playful. "I was just thinking about last time." He laughed low and smug. "Yeah, that was risky, but damn, it was worth it." I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. This wasn't just a one-time mistake. This wasn't some drunken accident. This was an affair, a long one, a comfortable one. And this man was beyond confident. Like he had nothing to fear. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. "Hey, remind me, when did this all start again?" He chuckled again. "Come on, babe. Don't tell me you forgot. We've been at this for what? 10 years now. 10 years. My vision blurred with rage. 10 years. My whole marriage was a lie. My kids, 4 of them, weren't mine. I was raising another man's children, while he sat back laughing behind my back. I needed to know who he was. I needed to see his face, so I made my move. "Hey, I was thinking," I said, forcing my voice to stay light. "Let's meet up soon. I miss you." He didn't hesitate. "You free tonight?" I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. "Yeah, same spot." "Perfect, can't wait," he said before hanging up. I stood there gripping my phone, my hands shaking. Tonight I was going to come face to face with the man who ruined my life. The rest of the day was a blur. My mind was locked onto one thing. Tonight, I was going to meet the man who destroyed my life. Sarah had no idea I was on to her. She carried on. Like everything was normal, laughing with the kids, texting on her phone, probably messaging him. I watched every move she made, every fake smile, every casual lie slipping from her lips, like she had been born to deceive. But tonight, I was done being the fool. I waited until Sarah fell asleep before I got ready. I kept my movements quiet, grabbed my keys, my jacket, and slipped out of the house. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. I wasn't just walking into this blind. I had a plan. I drove to the meeting spot, a small parking lot behind a quiet diner, the kind of place where people met when they didn't want to be seen. Exactly the kind of place cheaters used. I parked my car in the shadows and waited. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight they ached. But I didn't move. I just sat there staring at every car that pulled in, waiting. Then I saw him. A black SUV rolled in smoothly, like he had done this 100 times before. The driver's side door opened, and a tall, broad-shouldered man stepped out. He looked relaxed, confident. Too confident. And the moment I saw his face, my blood went cold. It was my best friend Jason. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My head spun. Jason. The man I had known for over 15 years. The man I trusted, like a brother. The man who had been at my wedding held, my kids been in my house, sat across from me at countless dinners. He was the father of 4 of my kids. My vision blurred with rage. I wanted to explode right then and there. I wanted to charge out of the car, grab him by the throat, and make him feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. But I didn't. I forced myself to breathe, forced myself to think, because this wasn't over yet. Not even close. I needed to hear it from his own mouth. I needed him to confirm everything. I stepped out of the car and walked toward him. Jason was looking down at his phone, probably texting Sarah, letting her know he was here. He didn't see me at first, but when he finally looked up, his face twisted with shock. "Mike," he said, his voice catching, "what are you doing here?" I stopped a few feet from him, my fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. "Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing." His eyes darted around like he was looking for an escape, but there was none. His face paled just enough for me to see the fear creeping in. I took another step closer, lowering my voice. "How long?" Jason swallowed hard. "Mike, listen." "How long?" I snapped my voice low and dangerous. His jaw clenched, his eyes shifting again. Then finally he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "A long time." I nodded, my whole body burning with fury, but I kept my voice steady. "Are you the father of my kids?" Jason's silence was enough of an answer, but I wanted to hear it. I needed to hear it from his own mouth. Finally he sighed, looking away. "Yeah, Mike, I am." Something inside me snapped. A part of me shattered into a million pieces. I had suspected it, but hearing it, that made it real. That made it undeniable. 4 of my kids weren't mine. They were his. And the woman I loved. The woman I dedicated my life to had let this happen for 10 years. I stepped closer, my fists itching to strike, but I held back. "You looked me in the eye for 10 years and lied to me." Jason looked guilty, but not enough. Not nearly enough. "Mike, I didn't mean for it to happen. It just..." I let out a cold laugh. "Don't say it. Just happened. Nothing just happens for 10 years, Jason." He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but he knew he had no defense. He just shook his head, looking away. Like he was the victim here. I took a deep breath. My rage controlled but dangerous. "You stole my life. You stole my family. You sat at my table, played with my kids, Acted like my friend while you were sleeping with my wife. Jason sighed. Mike, I cut him off. You don't get to talk. You don't get to make excuses. I stepped even closer until I was inches from his face. You're going to tell me everything, every single detail. Jason looked at me, hesitating. I smiled, but there was nothing friendly about it. Or I'll make sure you regret ever meeting me. He swallowed hard, nodded once, and took a deep breath. It started before your first kid was born. My whole body went rigid. Before my first kid, that meant from the very beginning, my entire marriage had been a lie. Jason wouldn't look me in the eye. He kept shifting on his feet like a coward, like a man who knew he had no way out. Good. He deserved to feel every ounce of guilt crawling through his skin. But I wasn't here for guilt. I was here for the truth. Every single dirty secret, every lie he and Sarah had been feeding me for over a decade. I crossed my arms, keeping my voice steady. Start from the beginning. No lies. No excuses. Jason exhaled, rubbing a hand down his face. Mike, man, I don't even know where to start. I stepped closer. Try the night you decided to stab me in the back. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. It started before your first kid was born. Those words hit me like a truck. My stomach twisted. I had been married for 12 years. My eldest son was 11. That meant, from the very beginning, before I even thought I was becoming a father. Sarah had already betrayed me with him. I kept my voice cold. So you were sleeping with my wife, even before we had kids? Jason flinched, but nodded. Yeah, it wasn't supposed to last this long, I swear. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, that makes it so much better. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Mike, we were drunk. It was one mistake at first, but then, I don't know. We just kept making excuses. She told me she was going to end it. She told me she loved you, but I clenched my fists. She told me she loved you. The words made my skin crawl. My wife, the woman I built a life with, had been whispering love to him while I worked to provide for our family. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I needed more. So you just kept sneaking around behind my back for a decade. Jason hesitated again. I caught it. That little flicker of doubt. That meant there was more. What aren't you telling me? I pressed, stepping closer. Don't make me ask again. He swallowed hard. It's not just me. The world tilted for a second. My breath caught in my throat. What? Jason finally met my eyes. Sarah. She wasn't just with me. My vision blurred with pure rage. My wife? My wife hadn't just been cheating with Jason. There were others. I grabbed his shirt, yanking him forward. So we were face to face. Who else? Jason's hands came up. Mike, I don't know exactly. She never told me details, but she was seeing someone else too. I only found out last year. Last year, while I was still playing the perfect husband, perfect father, perfect idiot. I shoved him back, disgusted. You expect me to believe you didn't know? He shook his head quickly. I swear I didn't, man. I only knew about the other guy when Sarah started getting distant, even with me. She told me she had met someone else, someone who gave her more, whatever the hell that meant. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my rage under control. Sarah had no loyalty to anyone. Not me, not even Jason. She was just a liar, a manipulator, a selfish woman who had no problem wrecking lives as long as she got what she wanted. I stepped back, inhaling deeply. Give me his name. Jason hesitated again. I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app, holding it up to his face. Either you tell me now, or I make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. Jason swallowed his pride and sighed. His name's Ryan. I don't know his last name, but he's married too. I barely even reacted at this point. My whole reality was already shattered. One more betrayal didn't even surprise me, but I wasn't done yet. Not even close. I put my phone away and nodded. All right, Jason. You've given me what I need. His shoulders sagged in relief. Mike, listen, man, I never wanted to hurt you. I cut him off with a sharp laugh. Oh, trust me. You'll be hurt soon enough. Jason's face paled, but I didn't stick around to comfort him. I turned on my heel and walked away. Because now I had a new mission. Sarah thought she got away with it, but she was about to find out just how wrong she was. I drove home in complete silence. No music, no distractions. Just the sound of my own breathing, steady, controlled, but barely holding back the rage boiling inside me. Jason's words kept replaying in my head over and over, like a nightmare on repeat. It's not just me. She was seeing someone else too. Sarah wasn't just a cheater. She was a serial liar, a manipulator, a woman who had no problem playing with lives and destroying families, and for over a decade, I had been the fool who trusted her. Not anymore. I pulled into the driveway, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The house was dark. The kids were asleep. Sarah was probably in bed, too peacefully resting. Like she wasn't living a double life. Like she wasn't the reason my entire world was collapsing. I stepped out of the car, shutting the door as quietly as possible, and walked inside. The moment I entered our bedroom, I saw her lying there, curled up under the blankets, breathing softly in her sleep. I stood there watching her for a long moment, studying the woman I once thought was my soulmate, the woman I once loved with everything in me. How many nights had she laid here pretending to be my loving wife, while sneaking out to meet Jason? How many times had she smiled at me, knowing she was carrying his child, not mine? A deep, bitter disgust curled in my chest. I wanted to shake her awake. I wanted to demand answers, right then and there. But no, not yet. This wasn't going to end with a simple confrontation. Sarah needed to suffer the way she made me suffer. So I took a deep breath, turned away, and walked out of the room. I had work to do. The next morning I acted normal, just like she did every single day for the past 12 years. I kissed the kids on the forehead, had breakfast, made small talk with Sarah, like I wasn't planning her downfall. Like I wasn't about to destroy her entire life. She had no idea I knew, and that gave me all the power. Sarah smiled at me over her coffee cup. "You okay? You seem quiet." I smiled back, pretending to be tired. Just a long night at work. She nodded completely, unaware, completely comfortable in her lies. Good stay, comfortable for now. As soon as she left to drop the kids at school, I pulled out my phone and made the first call. The DNA test results were coming in today, but I already knew the truth. 4 of my 5 kids weren't mine. I just needed the proof on paper. Then I made my second call. "Hello." Jason's voice was hesitant, nervous. Good, he should be. I kept my voice calm. "I need Ryan's number." Jason sighed on the other end. "Mike, I don't think..." I cut him off. "I don't care what you think. I need it. Now." Jason hesitated, but after a few seconds I got a text with Ryan's number attached. No last name, no details, just a number. That was all I needed. I dialed it immediately. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. This man was sleeping with my wife too. He was just as guilty. The phone rang twice, before a deep voice answered. "Yeah, who's this?" I kept my voice calm, steady. "I think we need to meet. I'm Sarah's husband." There was a long pause, then a sharp exhale. He knew exactly who I was. "Where?" he asked, his voice low, hesitant. I smirked. "I'll text you the location. Be there in an hour." I hung up and stared at my reflection in the kitchen window. My face was calm, but my eyes were filled with something dark, something cold. Sarah had spent years lying to me, thinking she could get away with it, thinking I would never find out. But now it was my turn to play the game, and I was about to burn everything she built to the ground. I sat in the cafe, waiting, my fingers tapping against the table. The air smelled like burnt coffee and stale pastries, but I wasn't here to enjoy breakfast. I was here to face the other man, the one Sarah had been sneaking around with while playing the perfect wife at home. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Here I looked up and saw him the moment he walked in. Ryan, he was taller than I expected. Maybe mid-40s, dressed sharp like a businessman. But his eyes told the real story. He looked nervous, like a man walking into a conversation he already knew would end badly. Good. I watched as he spotted me. He hesitated for half a second, then walked over, sitting down across from me. For a long moment, we just stared at each other, sizing each other up. Then I leaned back and smiled. "So Ryan, tell me, how long have you been sleeping with my wife?" His jaw tightened. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married at first." I laughed, a humorless sound. "At first? And when you did find out, you kept going anyway." Ryan sighed, rubbing his temples. "I won't lie, I messed up. But trust me, man. She's not who you think she is." My fists clenched, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Oh, I know exactly who she is now," he exhaled, shaking his head. "She told me she was unhappy, that you didn't treat her right, that she felt trapped. I stared at him coldly. And you believed her? He looked down, ashamed. I did? I leaned forward, dropping my voice lower. Tell me, Ryan, how many other men do you think she told that same sob story to? He frowned. What do you mean? I let the silence stretch before I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. The screen showed a picture of Jason Ryan's eyes flicked to it, and immediately his face changed. Recognition, shock, disgust. Bingo. I tilted my head. Yeah, that's the other guy. Ryan swallowed hard. You're joking. Not even a little, I said flatly. You weren't special, Ryan. You were just another name on her list. I watched as the realization hit him, as the weight of it all sank in. This wasn't some tragic love story. He was just another pawn in Sarah's game. Just like I had been. Just like Jason had been. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something other than rage. I felt control. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, cursing under his breath. I'm a married man. I risked everything for her. I smirked. Yeah, and so did Jason. And who knows how many others. Ryan looked sick. Jesus Christ. I leaned in, my voice deadly calm. Now let me tell you what's going to happen next. He looked up, meeting my gaze wary but listening. I leaned in, my voice deadly calm. Now let me tell you what's going to happen next. He looked up, meeting my gaze wary but listening. You and I were going to work together, I said, because Sarah needs to pay for what she's done to both of us. Ryan hesitated, then slowly nodded. I'm listening. I sat back satisfied. Good, because Sarah thought she had control, thought she could keep lying forever, but she was about to find out exactly what happens when the truth finally catches up, and I was going to make sure it destroyed her. Ryan sat there stunned, the reality of Sarah's betrayal sinking into his bones. He wasn't just some side fling. He was one of many, and now he knew it. I could see the fire building in his eyes, the same fire burning inside me. We weren't just victims anymore. We were men with a mission. I leaned forward, voice low and steady. Here's what we're going to do. Ryan swallowed hard. I'm listening. I smirked. Sarah played us both. She played Jason too. Hell, she's been playing me for over a decade. But now we flip the script. We turn her game against her. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, nodding slowly. And how exactly do we do that? I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. The DNA test results were open on the screen. 4 of my 5 kids weren't mine. The proof was right there in black and white. Ryan's eyes widened as he scanned the document. Holy... He looked up at me. She really did this to you? I nodded slowly, feeling the familiar weight of betrayal settle in my chest. And she never planned on telling me. She thought I'd never find out. Ryan exhaled, shaking his head. Man, this woman is something else. She is, I agreed, but now it's time she faces consequences. Ryan nodded. I'm in, whatever you need. That night I walked into the house, calm, collected, ready. Sarah was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone, like she wasn't living a double life. Like she wasn't a liar, a manipulator, a woman who had completely shattered our family. I stood in the doorway watching her for a moment before I spoke. We need to talk. She looked up, blinking. What's wrong? I smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was cold. It was final. I know everything, Sarah. Her face froze for half a second. Just a flicker of panic before she quickly masked it with a confused frown. What are you talking about? I stepped forward, tossing the DNA results onto the coffee table. 4 of our 5 kids aren't mine. Silence. She didn't even blink, didn't even try to fake shock. Instead, she sighed, shaking her head, like I was being dramatic. Mike, does it really matter? You've raised them. You're their father. I stared at her, my blood boiling. Are you serious? Right now? She scoffed, crossing her arms. You're acting like I killed someone. They're still your kids. You love them, don't you? I took a slow breath, barely containing the rage. You stole my right to choose. You lied to me for over a decade. You let me believe... My voice cracked for the first time, but I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay in control. You let me believe they were mine while you ran around behind my back? Sarah rolled her eyes. Mike, be realistic. Men like you don't leave. You're not going anywhere. I laughed. Then, a slow, dark chuckle. You really think that, huh? I pulled out my phone and hit play. Ryan's voice filled the room. She told me she was unhappy, that Mike didn't treat her right, that she felt trapped. Sarah's face paled, her breath hitching. Where did you get that? I smirked. Oh, Sarah, you weren't as careful as you thought. Then I hit play again, Jason's voice this time. It's not just me, she was seeing someone else too. Sarah shot up from the couch, now fully panicked. Mike, stop! I ignored her, tossing my phone onto the table. I already spoke to the lawyer. Papers are filed. I'm divorcing you. And guess what? I'm taking full custody of our son, the one that's actually mine. She gasped, stepping closer. Mike, no, please don't do this. You don't mean it. We can fix this. I shook my head. You can't fix something that was never real. Tears welled in her eyes now, genuine fear creeping in. Please, I love you. I laughed again, bitter this time. No, you don't. You never did. You loved the life I gave you, the stability, the comfort. But me, you never loved me. She tried to reach for my hand, but I stepped back. Goodbye, Sarah. And with that, I walked away, leaving her standing there, broken exactly how she left me. As I walked out of that house for the last time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. No more lies. No more betrayal. No more pretending to be the fool Sarah thought I was. She lost everything that night. Not just me, but the life she built on deception. And me. I walked away with my head held high, knowing I took back my power. If you made it this far, drop a comment below. Would you ever forgive this kind of betrayal, or would you walk away just like I did? Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more insane real-life betrayals, just like this one. Hit that bell icon so you never miss a new upload, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.